Hi guys, my name is Noni Matikela. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So today I want us to talk about the confession that they are busy with. Ramsipile and Bongani Danzi are busy with that. You know what? What we have realized right now is that this is not a murder trial anymore. This is a trial of the criminal justice system itself. Ladies and gentlemen, what you are watching unfold in that courtroom is not a normal criminal trial. It is not. It is not even a flawed one, Jay. Do you understand? What we are witnessing is something far more serious, a procedural collapse so deep that the case has stopped being about the victim and has started being about the state versus itself. That's what we are watching there. And once that line is crossed, justice is no longer delayed. It is structurally impossible because, wow, what we every day witnessing when we are watching the Senzo Miwa case, haibo sana. Let's start with the most basic legal principle, one so fundamental that every law student learns it in their first year. No person may incriminate themselves without proper legal representation. We know that most, right? That is not a suggestion. That is not a guideline. That is constitutional law. Yet here we are in the Senzo Meyewa Mera trial. We are being asked to accept confessions or confession statements that directly implicate individuals made without proper legal advice, without adequate safeguards, and without procedural integrity of it all. And ask yourself this: how can a confession be considered voluntarily when the person making it does not fully understand consequences? How can it be lawful when the person has not heard the benefit of counsel? And most importantly, how can a court allow it to stand? Do you understand what's going on here? And also, when you examine Moses' confession carefully, we're talking about that one now, something becomes immediately clear. The problem is not what he said. The problem is that he was allowed to say it at all. Do you understand? The problem is that he was allowed to say it at all, and defense lawyers have approached this issue cautiously, diplomatically, even, but legally speaking, the issue is glaring. You cannot repair a broken process by pretending the outcome is clean. You can't do that. Do you see? Even on Moses' confession, do you understand that? Now, if the confessions are lawfully, or I mean, if the confessions are unlawfully obtained, the contents become irrelevant. Courts are not permitted to rescue defective investigations. They are required to reject them. Anything else turns the courtroom into a theater of convenience once all of that is disregarded. Do you understand? And also now we're going to dance because same thing happens to him. The same thing that happened to Moses Sibia. It happens again to Ndanzi. This is where the name Mjiago becomes crucial because Mjiago's case teaches us something uncomfortable but vital. The statement attributed to him that he was present and he was representing Bongani Ndanzi, and those statements were made freely, and those statements were made willingly, and then he is the one that was helping Bongani Ndanzi. All of that, he was the legal guidance of Bongani Ndanzi. But now, the statements are attributed to Bongani Ndanzi were not statements that were freely made. You can't say they were freely made. They were statements constructed around Bongani Ndanzi. and the words placed in his mouth. Words were placed in his mouth. Meanings reshaped, narratives forced. And that is why today you do not hear about Ntanzi confessed, because once examined, those statements collapse. Do you understand? This pattern explains why certain accused persons like Ntanzi are pushing back, like Muzi pushes back. This also explains they understand something that the public is only beginning to see. They're pushing back firmly. They understand that something that we are only seeing now. This is not about truth seeking. This is about statement manufacturing. That's what it is about. At this point, some may try to reduce the issue to one investigator, Brigadier Bongani Gininder. But that is intellectually dishonest if you can look at it. This does not stop with Brigadier Bongani Gininder, because every investigator reports to someone. So the real question becomes unavoidable. Who is Gininda's superior? And that answer usually leads to General Fanny Masemula. Once you acknowledge that chain of command, the picture changes. This is no longer about a rogue conduct. It is about institutional tolerance. And when procedure is violated at that level, the system itself becomes compromised. Because you can't tell me that General Masemula is quiet and all of this is happening. Why is he not doing? He was able to do something about the tender for Matlala. Why is he not doing something about the investigation of Gininder? It was in the tender was cancelled without too many consultations and whatnot. It was just cancelled. So why this investigation is the General Masemula, who Gininder reports to, is not doing anything about it? I'm not saying he did something or whatever, but my question is, why is he not doing something about it? Let's be very clear about what is currently before the court. Statements not properly commissioned, witness not lawfully arrested or subpoenaed, individuals appearing in court without correct arraignment, arrest following press conferences, not investigations, missing forensic basics, including fingerprints. These are not technical mistakes, guys. These are fatal procedural defects. Once evidence is tainted at that route, it does not become cleaner with time. It becomes more dangerous, because now the court is being asked to legitimize illegality. Why is the court expected to legitimize this? And this is the most painful truth of all. This case is no longer about Senzo Meyiwa. His name has been invoked. I don't know if you guys have noticed. His memory is referenced, but justice for him cannot exist inside a broken process. It can't. What this trial has become is something else entirely. The state versus the state, or more accurately, the criminal justice system versus the public. When the procedure collapses, the public becomes the victim. Now, consider timeline involving accused number 5. We are told he was in custody between 2018 and 2020. Yet, for some reason, he is alleged to have been present elsewhere during that same period. Do you remember Zungu saying a chloricop to the people that he saw accused number 5 somewhere in Tembisa? Police say they were searching for injuries or scars on a foot, not a bullet wound. Why were they busy searching for injuries? Whereas the same person who was inside the house Longwe is allegedly the one that got injured in his foot. These contradictions are not minor contradictions. They destroy credibility, reliability, and investigative honesty. A case cannot survive this level of inconsistency. So let us say this clearly. We should not even be having a conversation about anything else. But we are, because procedural violations were allowed. And once a court tolerates unlawful confessions, improper arrest, and defective evidence, justice does not bend, it breaks. This trial is not collapsing because of public opinion. It is collapsing because procedure was abandoned. And when procedure is abandoned, truth becomes optional, law becomes negotiable, and justice becomes theater. That is the real crisis. That is the real crisis that we have there. I don't know about you, but everything, Jay, looks bad for the Senzomiwa case. Let's talk in the comment section. I want to hear your views. Thank you so much. I will see you on our next video. Bye-bye.